Welcome back to Out and About Today. I'm Brent Meredith. We've long suspected that gay-straight alliances, or GSAs, can be helpful to LGBTQ teens in high school, but a new study by Vanderbilt's Peabody Research Institute finds they not only significantly reduce bullying based on sexual orientation or gender expression, but also they lower levels of victimization. Here tonight to share more about their findings are researchers Robert Marks and Heather Hensman-Ketry. Welcome to you both, guys. Nice to see you.
Nice to be here.
Now, before we jump into the findings, I want to know a little bit about yourselves so the viewers can know that you're talking with some authority on this. Robert, tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, great. So I was a gay high school student.
Okay.
And then I was a gay high school teacher.
Okay.
And then I was a gay straight alliance advisor. And now I am a researcher at Peabody.
Well, that is the perfect lineup to talk about this. Heather?
I'm a sociologist and research associate at the Peabody Research Institute. And Robert and I actually met through this project.
Oh, really?
It was a very interesting sort of alliance that we've built, to build a pun here. But we actually both were independently developing this project.
Really?
We had both had the idea to do this project, didn't know each other. And a colleague of ours, Dr. Emily Tanner-Smith, knew us both separately and put together that we were both working on this, put us together. We clicked and hit the ground running with it and got it done very, very quickly.
I was going to say probably twice as fast.
It was.
So now that we're a little bit better acquainted, let's talk about the study. How did you go about gathering and then analyzing the data? And if you want to talk a little bit about how that works without being too technical, feel free. Heather?
So what we conducted was a systematic review and meta-analysis. A lot of times bodies of research can be a little confusing because studies employ different methods, they have different findings. It's hard to tell what the big picture is. So systematic reviews and meta-analyses pull all that together and give you the big picture. So through the systematic review, what we did was try to find every study that had been conducted on GSAs looking at these victimization outcomes, whether published or not. And within certain methodological criteria. So we wanted to find studies that had a certain level of quality to them. So we didn't put in studies that didn't compare students who were at schools with GSAs to students who were at schools without GSAs. We dropped all of those. And the meta-analysis part is where we take all the data from those studies, pull them together into one huge data set and analyze those.
Okay. Now, did you guys have any expectations going into this, Robert, since you had sort of the lead-in, the best lead-in? Did you have a sort of a hypothesis in mind that you thought?
I mean, I would say that I'm certainly not impartial. I was a GSA advisor, and I watched students grow and blossom, and I watched my school climate become safer and better and more whole and more unified. And so I very much thought that we were going to find what we found, and that's why it was so important, as Heather was talking about, why it was so important for us to be so rigorous in finding all studies, because I have an agenda, so it's very important to me to make sure that we're doing this as rigorously as we can.
Well, exactly, and that's why I wanted to ask that question, because it seems logical that that would make sense, and you having experienced it too. Now, your findings suggest a decrease in bullying for all LGBTQ students in those schools, regardless of whether they participated in the GSA or not. Can you explain that a little further, though, Heather? What does that exactly mean?
Well, I want to be really clear just to state that we didn't actually compare students who were members to students who were not. There are actually a few studies out there that do that, but there aren't enough for us to include them in our analysis. But we didn't distinguish. So what that means is you didn't have to be a member to get the benefit.
Okay. And so what were some of the sort of percents? I'd put a few here down that I thought were interesting. Do you want to share any of those, or you want me to talk about those a little bit? I think it was like 52% less likely to hear homophobic remarks. There was 36% less likely to be fearful for their personal safety, and then 30% less likely to experience homophobic victimization. I mean, that's pretty significant percentages, is it not?
And what's important is it's in line with other anti-bullying programs, but anti-bullying programs are normally top-down, imposed by administration, and normally schools pay to bring someone in to run those programs. Whereas a GSA is a student-led, student-run organization that is grassroots youth advocacy. So what we're saying is, when you look at these findings in the body of literature, not only do they make a lot of sense, but they also show that what we're finding wouldn't replace an anti-bullying program, but is doing very similar things.
I follow. Okay.
And doing other things as well.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about sort of your past experiences with parents and GSAs, having been sort of an administrator of one. We've all heard stories, seen stuff on the news. What was your personal experience like in that role?
I want to say, by and large, the experience was awesome, and by and large, parents were very supportive. But I definitely had more than one phone conversation with a concerned parent saying, why is my daughter there? Are you trying to turn my daughter queer? Why would my daughter need this club? Why isn't my daughter coming home and working on her homework? And to be able to talk through with parents about the importance and the change and the growth that her daughter, but that most of the students were experiencing, was really powerful to me.
Now, and not to interrupt you, but was that experience in such that they were obviously a straight identifying student and they were going and the parent was wondering? I've often wondered about that. Like, if you have a child and like, well, you're going to the GSA, or you're slowly trying to come out to me, what was that like? Did you experience any of that? Or?
That parent in particular, I don't think was as concerned that she identified her daughter as straight and her daughter was slowly blossoming into a queer woman. But I do think that some parents read a lot into membership with the GSA.
Yeah.
And I had meetings of my GSA that were predominantly straight identified students. Who just said, I want to show my support, I want to be an ally, I want to learn, I want to make new friends, I want to experience part of school where I can be wholly myself, even if my sexuality isn't maybe what's limiting me.
Yeah. We've only got about a minute left, and I wanted Heather to have a chance to speak again, because I wanted to know, is creating such alliances in high schools, why is it so important for both, the LGBTQ students, which you studied, but also for the straight students? And why is it important to have this research to sort of prove what we just talked about, that, sort of proving the obvious? Why is that important?
The alliance part is very important in terms of bringing in the members of a privileged group to show their support for a group that is marginalized, often by that privileged group. That's the key to sort of making these groups work. In terms of proving something that maybe is common sense, first of all, I think we need data to support things we think are common sense, because sometimes we're wrong. Secondly, it may be common sense to some people, but not others. And I think when we do see political resistance, such as there's a local case now that's made the news here in Tennessee.
I'm going to have to cut you off. I'm sorry. We've only got about 5 seconds left. I really am sorry, but we're going to have to go. And when we come back, Chuck has a look at Studio TN's new season in the Entertainment Outlook. Stay with us.